Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou e hoa mā. Hello and welcome everybody to the first episode of the Joy of Yarn with Kiwi James podcast. I've got a friend with me today. This is Miss Jaffa the cat, and as I was setting up to do this first episode, she decided to jump onto the dining table. She knows she's not allowed on the dining table, but that's never stopped her from being on the dining table. Anyone who shares their life with feline friends will know exactly what I'm talking about. Anyway, that's Miss Jaffa, and as I said, I'm Kiwi James. Some of you may know me already, some of you may not. I'm a knitter from New Zealand. I currently live in the town of Tahi in the Wairarapa region of New Zealand, which is about an hour and a quarter's drive away from our capital city, Wellington, at the bottom of the North Island. I've been knitting on and off for, 45 years now, which makes me seem really, really old. And I suppose that's because I am starting to get a bit old now. I've always enjoyed knitting. I've always found comfort in knitting, and I come from a long line of knitters in my family as well. And I feel quite fortunate that both my mother and my father were very good knitters, and that's really why I learned to knit at such a young age. I've always enjoyed being part of a knitting community. And different sorts of things I've done in the past with my knitting has been, I've been a knitting teacher at different retreats and what have you. I had a little store at the back of my house at one point called Joy of Yarn, hence the name for this podcast. And as part of Joy of Yarn too, at one point I was even hand dyeing yarns. So done lots of fun things with that. I've travelled overseas to do workshops with people like Kay Fassett. And earlier this year I was very fortunate to go overseas for a big trip. And the highlight of that was a 10-day knitters tour through Ireland. So interestingly enough, I was planning on doing that trip to Ireland just as a part of discovering who I am to a certain extent, one of these midlife sabbaticals that I'm currently on. I'm a New Zealander, so on my mother's side, I'm probably a fourth generation New Zealander, and on my dad's side, I'm sort of like a second and third generation New Zealander. Just in terms of, we're an immigrant family, I suppose, in most respects. And with immigration to another country, it's a matter of, there's two paths you go down. One is you keep all your traditions from where you've come, or the other, which is kind of what my family adopted, is that you drop all those traditions behind to try and assimilate to the country that you've moved to. So I was always taught that I was a New Zealander, and that's all you needed to be. But, I did one of those DNA tests a few years ago, and I was quite intrigued because I'm quite a mix of different ethnicities. And in New Zealand, it is a country based on immigration, and we have our native people, the Māori, and they are called tangata whenua, so they're the people of the land. And I'm just a guy whose family came here 100 or so years ago. But when I did the DNA test, it was a bit of an eye-opener for me. And it's got me thinking about what I might want to do with that ethnicity and to explore certain things about it. So that's going to inform my knitting in the coming years, I think, in terms of tracing my family line and which countries they are, and possibly knitting from those countries. I'll just give you a quick rundown of what my ethnicities are, actually, because I did the ancestry.com one, and the interesting thing is that it can change. There's a little button that says update, and when you press that update button, your percentages can change quite dramatically as they redefine different markers in your DNA strain. So basically at the moment, and I say at the moment, I'm 30% Scottish, which is great because my mother's surname is Henderson, so I knew that we came down on the Scottish line from there. I'm 25% Swedish-Danish, so they define those two as being, the same ethnicity. 23% English, 13% Norwegian, 3% Welsh, 2% Germanic Europe, 2% Irish, and this was the real surprise to me, I'm 1% Nigerian and 1% Benin and Togo. So I really wasn't sure. Well, I wasn't expecting any African side. I was expecting European and Scandinavian for sure. So it's got me quite intrigued. As I do more episodes of this podcast, you'll probably discover my development of what I've been learning about my different ethnicities and tracing my family line back. It's going to be quite interesting. And ultimately, I hope to do a little bit of travel associated with doing that tracing of my family line. So stay tuned for that. But more importantly, I want to make this a New Zealand focused podcast as well, in terms of showing places in New Zealand, people, our makers, our designers, our stores, our retailers, our producers. Just a bit of a fun look into what life is like for a yarn focused person like myself in New Zealand. So a phrase I learned as a child when I learned a little bit of Te Reo Māori, which is the Maori language, was ko au tēnei, which means who am I? And it's always a funny question because you know who your parents are, and if you're lucky, your grandparents, but I don't know much more beyond that. So this will be interesting to see how I go through with things. I mean, but one thing for sure is that knitting is in my DNA. I haven't dabbled with too many other yarn-related crafts. I have an avoidance of crochet. I call it the C word. I put it down to being maimed by the sight of all the crochet throws and rugs when I was a child, and those harsh, bright acrylic yarns that took dyes so well back in the 1970s. So let's get started with what's on my needles at the moment. When we started, I was working away on this little project here. What I try and do is, I mean, I'm quite used to knitting socks. I quite like doing socks. They're just a nice, easy, portable project. And I always have a pair on the go. I like to have one really simple pair that I don't even have to think about. It's just normally just plain knitting without doing any kind of pattern work. And then I'll have a more complex one, which I do at home when I'm not interrupted as much. So what I was working on here is a nice self-coloured yarn. And it's just a plain vanilla sock. And it's building up with a pattern to it. It's not random, it's designed. It's actually from the Arne and Carlos range of yarns I did for Regia, for the label here. So this one is called Mountains and Fjords. So it's designed to do a self pattern. So it's got the greens and the blues and a pale colour. So this is just my little project on the go all the time. In my Stephen and Penelope little project bag, because I was fortunate enough to be in Amsterdam earlier this year. So that's just my little fill-in project, and that's just straightforward. I kind of know that sock pattern off by heart because it's just it's for me. So it's just 68 stitches in the round, and you go down to the heel flap and do the heel flap. I'm a top-down sock knitter, so I prefer that than toe up. But I might broaden my horizons soon. Who knows? Now, another project which is on my needles, which didn't go quite so well for me. I've got some Scottish heritage. I've got a couple of kilts. So I wanted to knit myself a new pair of kilt hose. Hose is the name given to socks that you wear with the kilt. On my trip overseas this year. And I started off all full of enthusiasm, but I underestimated how tired you can get from air travel. Because from New Zealand it takes a long time to get to Europe. So I was trying to knit on the plane, that I was having a bit of a misadventure with the person that was sitting next to me. It made for a somewhat fraught journey, shall we say. So I was actually sitting down and trying to do some knitting, and I got this far. So this is the cuff, because again, I'm doing it cuff down. It's a pair of kilt hose which I've been meaning to do for several years now, and I was very excited. And it's one of the Zauberball yarns, and I love the colour. But what I underestimate is that when you're tired and you're not knitting in very good light, dark colours aren't very easy to knit with, especially when you launch forth into a really heavily cable pattern. And I'll just reach across here, because the pattern I was doing is called Celtic Pride. And, oh, it's a little bit glary, sorry about that. So these are a pair of kilt hose, and it's just got a beautiful cable pattern happening on the side. I first saw these kilt hose, must be 10 years ago now, in this great book that came out called Outside the Socks. People might be familiar with the old Knitters magazine from America by XRX Publications. They did a contest for a lot of people to design socks And out of all the great entries that were received, they created this book here. So that's been a bit of a go-to book for me for several years in terms of admiring different socks and things I might want to then do. And I thought, right, I'll have time on my travels to sit down and knit where I'm not doing other sorts of things. And that was the cunning plan. It was a complex cable pattern, and I found I was quite tired, and it wasn't a going thing. So will I finish them? I do like that pattern. I do want to finish that pattern. It may not be in this yarn. It might be in a different yarn. One that is a lighter colour, but we'll soon see. But for the meantime, it's shoved into my little ball sack and put to one side, because I think that's where that one's going to stay for a little while yet. Now, I said try and do one simple pair of socks and one complicated pair of socks at a time. Well, I've abandoned that complicated pair for a bit. And this is my current one I'm working on. So this one here. This pattern, I'll just hold a bit closer because the colour, oh, I should hold it this way. Because when you do top down, you can sort of make it out. This is called Bicycle Socks by Lucy Neatby. So Lucy is based in Nova Scotia in Canada. And, oh, just one moment, I'll just get the pattern. So it's called Bicycle Socks. This was designed after she did a cycling trip herself. So the pattern features a repeat, which is to represent bicycle chain, which is kind of cool. And then there's an image of a person riding a bike. And then with different options that you can do with it, there'll be an option of an eagle or a moose, because those were animals that she came across on the cycle. I've got a relative who's got a birthday coming up and is a cyclist. So I was looking randomly online for cyclist t-shirts. I could buy him a t-shirt for his birthday. But then that freaky thing when you search for something, all of a sudden other things start appearing in your feed in these ads that you weren't expecting. Well, that happened to me, and one of those ads was for Lucy's pattern bicycle socks. Now, Lucy's closed down most of her business recently, but it was this other little company, it was a Little Red Barn, I think they were called, and they were selling the patterns. So I bought the pattern, and I thought, right, I'll see if I can get this done in time for the birthday. This is take 2 of the socks. Take 1, I started with a different colour. Do I have that colour here? I do have that colour here. So I had the grey in my stash. It's 100% merino with a strong twist to it, and I hand dyed it myself here at home. And I looked for a colour to contrast with it, and I had this other colour which I had dyed, which I really like. I just kind of thought the grey and the blue were going to be quite complementary. But when I started knitting, they were far from complementary. The blue was just, you couldn't see the detail. There were too many shades in the blue that it was fighting with the grey, and just everything was getting lost, which was a bit of a shame, really. So I thought, what have I got? And I rummaged around in my stash, and I came up with the orange. I wanted to have something on the same yarn base, and I had this orange there, which I hadn't dyed. This one, if I have the label here, I do indeed. Is called Burnt Orange, and it's from Kiwi Yarn-A, who's a dyer based in Christchurch here in New Zealand. So Christchurch is in the South Island, and it's the same yarn base as what I'd used with my grey. I just thought the orange would be a bit of a stronger contrast, and to be quite honest, I think the colours work really well together too. So I was happy for that fortunate change. So that's also a merino yarn from merino that's grown here in New Zealand, and that yarn base is exported all around the world. Actually, it's so popular. So I'm intrigued by the pattern as to how well I'll go with it. The pattern calls for 80 stitches in the round, which surprised me because that's quite a lot. I normally have 68 stitches in the round. Now it's colourwork knitting, so that takes a bit of space too. And I tend to knit on a 2.75mm needle for my socks. So I'm intrigued to see how that will turn out. But keep watching this space and we'll let you know. And also too, it's knitting to a deadline. So I've got the birthday party coming up soon, and it's going to be an 80s themed birthday party. So we're supposed to go in costume. So I'm thinking, what am I going to wear in costume? It's still 1980s. Got an old pair of jeans. I might acid wash them and see what they look like. I did think that I might knit a tie, because I know in the 1980s there was this little rage for a short period of time for really skinny knitted ties, because I had one in the late 1980s. I also had a black leather skinny tie that had a screen print design on from a little artisan workshop that I bought at the time. I thought it was the greatest thing wearing it, but I don't know. Luckily, there are no photographs that remain of that time of me, so we don't know for sure. So that's pretty much what's on my needles at the moment. I try and keep the number of individual projects down so that I'm not conflicted and I spend a little bit of time on each one and make no real progress. But I'm sure that if I was to delve too much deeper into my yarn cupboard, that I would probably find 2 or 3 other abandoned projects, but I might save those for another time. So that's what's on my needles. So, off the needles. Everybody likes to get projects off the needles. You get a sense of completion and feel good about things. As we're into November now, but we've just finished October, October's also become known as Socktober. And I do a lot of sock knitting, so I did get some socks done. What I'm going to show you though are a couple of socks that I've probably done that were part of my trip when I was away. So the first ones I'll show you are here. When I abandoned the kilt hose on my trip, I just kind of thought, well, what am I going to knit instead? And I just thought, right, well, I'll do a simple sock because I can do that on autopilot. I don't need to think about it too much. And the first yarn store I went to on my trip was in Amsterdam. That was Stephen and Penelope's. And I had quite an exciting time just rummaging around that store. People rave about it, and it was interesting. I really enjoyed it. It was a beautifully displayed store, lots of tempting yarns. And I made some purchases. It's pretty impossible for me to go into a yarn store and not make purchases. But my experience was not the greatest in the store. I had the misfortune of going into the store on the day they were doing their stock take. So while the staff were friendly, there were lots of staff in the store, and I kind of felt like I was in their way when I was going through the things. So I've got a long history in retail as well, and I've just always been a firm supporter of stock takes being done outside of trading hours. I know it's a big job and it needs to be done, but honestly, as a customer, I felt an inconvenience to the people in the store when I was there, which isn't the best experience to have in a yarn store, unfortunately. But as I say, it didn't stop me from buying anything, so I bought some things. And one was this yarn. Did I keep the label? I don't think I have. It's called onion wool, onion sock. I must have the label here somewhere. Not to worry. And so I bought 2 50-gram balls of it, one in a blue and one in the bone colour. And I just thought, well, how can I alternate them? And I thought I could just do plain solid stripes, but I thought, no, I want a real contrast. So I did the body of one in bone with some blue stripes, the other one in body in blue and bone stripes. So again, the top-down socks, just a vanilla sock. And I do generally 68 stitches in the round, and I do about 65 rounds until I start shaping for the heel. And at the moment, I just do a simple heel flap and then a gusset, and then you carry on down until you shape your toe. It's just, as I say, for me, it's nearly on autopilot because it's just straightforward. And I hadn't come across this onion nettle yarn before, so I thought, oh, that's a bit of fun. It doesn't feel instantly as soft as Merinos that I'm used to, but I'm sure it will soften up with a few washes. And what I'm trying to do now, and what I've decided to do, is link to when I finish an item like this. I've started something called a memory project for me. And quite often, a lot of the things I've knitted in the past, I gift to other people. And so therefore I don't have a record of what it was. I've been a little bit naughty and not being active on Ravelry and recording all the things I knit. So there's a lost part of my knitting to a certain extent. But also too, memory is very important to me because I had a major concussion about 4 years ago, and parts of my memory have now been lost, or I struggle to bring it back when I want it. I used to be amazing at quiz nights for all the trivia I've snavelled away in my brain over the years, but now I just can't bring those answers back as quickly as I used to, or I can't even bring the answers back at all now, which is a bit of a crazy thing. So for all my knitting from this point on, I've created myself a memory project so that when the item is finished, I'm then knitting a rectangular shape with a cable pattern on, because I love cables so much. And this will be a physical record of what I've knitted. So I'll keep a little bit of yarn from each project and then put it in here. And as I finish it, I'll then put some photographs with it which reinforce what it is. So I'm calling these my Amsterdam socks because I bought the yarn in Amsterdam. And on my big trip overseas this year, I met up with a friend of mine who I'd known online for several years called Yarn, and he's Dutch Yarn on Ravelry and other media. So for me, these are my Amsterdam socks. And every time I wear them, I will think of my time in Amsterdam and catching up with my friend Yarn. And they'll be immortalised also in here. I mean, who knows? I might even send these through to Yarn as a surprise present. It might be a high possibility. Hopefully he's got the same size feet as me. Now, also while I was on my travels, I managed to complete, if I can just wedge this away from Miss Jaffa, another pair of socks. Now, this is self-striping, of course, and a lot of people that are non-knitters think, oh my gosh, such hard work, all those ends you would have had to sew in. Well, the great thing about self-striping sock yarn is that all the work's done for you. So you get a spectacular sock without too much effort, other than just knitting in the round. When it's a self-striping sock, I tend to just do a plain self-striping yarn. I tend to do a plain vanilla sock, just because I think the yarn and the colours just tell the story that you need to. So again, I was just on holiday. I didn't want to focus or concentrate too much because I was travelling an awful lot. So I did plain socks with these. This yarn is from West Yorkshire Spinners, and it's their signature 4-ply. So it's a standard sock yarn in terms of it's 75%, was it 75% wool and 25% nylon. But what it's also saying is that 35% of the wool is blue-faced Leicester. It doesn't break down the content of the rest of it, because wool is just a very general word which you can use, and I think some people use it too liberally. But anyway, so it's got some blue-faced Leicester, which is quite nice because that's a really popular sheep from the UK. And the little story attached with these ones is that, and I'm calling these the Hampton Court Palace socks. And I'm calling them that because I bought this yarn when I was sightseeing with my friend Sarah, who's based in London. And I was down in London, and we were racing off to see Hampton Court Palace, and it was an extraordinarily hot day. I mean, I was in London probably about 10 days after the heat wave had really hit that summer. So I was hoping temperatures would be a little bit lower. And unfortunately they weren't. And poor Sarah, she was suffering from the heat. So we made a little stop on the way. So she jumped into the John Lewis store to look for a slightly cooler top to wear because she was overheating with what she wanted. It was a cool start to the day. Then it got really hot, unexpectedly hot, and hotter than forecast. So while Sarah was going through the women's section, I just sat down in the armchair, which is left there for, male shoppers, which I don't know if that's insulting sometimes or not, but I just looked around to my right and I saw that there was a yarn section in John Lewis. So I just toddled over to the yarn section and found this colourway. And I just love this colourway because Sarah and I had been in Edinburgh the weekend before, and we'd caught the train down from Edinburgh to London. And I was just entranced by the landscape as we were going through. It was very different to the Swedish landscape, which I'd seen on a train just a few weeks before that. But coming down from Edinburgh, it's not just Scotland that has heather growing on the sides of the train tracks. So the heather was just starting to bloom in parts of northern England as well. So the colours of this just made me think of the heather. So you've sort of like got the green of the grass and the yellow of some of the dried parched areas. But you've got these two beautiful pink and purple colours, which to me just brought alive the heather that I was seeing starting to come into bloom. And again, it's sort of like a memory of the trip then. So I bought that yarn and shoved it away in my bag and caught up with Sarah again, and off we went to Hampton Court Palace. And that was quite a wonderful place to visit. The Tudor monarchy was based there, and they didn't do things by halves. It's a very beautiful palace and well worth a visit if you've got the opportunity to go there at all. So again, it's a vanilla sock. These ones I will keep for myself, and they're in the memory project. So that's that rectangle there, and I enjoy them. I've worn them a couple of times already, and they're fluffed up a bit with washing. So I love those to death. Now I've got Miss Jaffa here, and she is asleep, and her little paws are starting to twitch. So obviously she's chasing something in her sleep. And I'm just going to delicately move another pair of socks away, and hopefully it won't wake her up. Oh, it woke her up. Oh, sorry, Jaffa. Sorry, Jaffa. Now, I mentioned that Sarah and I have been up in Edinburgh, and when we were there, I popped around to the yarn store, Ginger Twist Studios. And what a fantastic yarn store that is. It's such a teeny tiny store. I think it's only about 50% larger than the store I had in Greytown at the back of my house. And so that says it's really small. And one side of the store was just completely covered in yarns and hanging in the full hank that the owner of the store died. And then on the other side, there were some commercial yarns. And while I bought some of the Ginger Twist yarns, I haven't knitted them up yet, so they're in my stash. But on the other side, a colourway that got my attention is also from the West Yorkshire Yarn Spinners. And it's like the same self-striping, but quite colourful. And what caught my eye is that this is in a designer range. So this colourway was designed by Zandra Rhodes, who's a famous British designer. And I just thought the bright pink and the red went really well together and just lifted it slightly. So even though it's got like the blue and the brown in it as well, I mean, I think this is like anybody could wear this. It's not just because it's got pink, a guy can't wear it. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of pink myself, but I quite like it when it's mixed in with these other colours as well. I don't think I'd wear a totally pink sock myself, just not my thing, but happy to wear it as just like a juxtaposition against other colours as well. Because colour is all about comfort, really, too. You wear colours that make you feel happy and make you have a feeling. And with my sort of like memory project, for me, I mean, again, it's in here as well. We've got it. Oh, is it that one there? I don't think it is. It is that one there. Just hadn't got to the bright red in it yet. Actually, no, made a total mistake. I haven't done my memory tile for that one yet, so I'll have to do that memory tile and add it in there. I'm thinking, those colours don't match. Yeah, so much for me being too prepared. So those were 3 full pairs of socks that I did in the month of sort of like September and October as I was travelling and when I just got back. And quite often what happens is there's some wool left over, because a lot of people, when they buy these big 100-gram yarn, it was a little bit confusing, wasn't it? What was I going to say? With these ones, there's about 400 metres or 437 yards of yarn. And if you're doing women's socks, you'll have quite a bit of yarn left over generally. And with men's, you still have some left over. Some people I know that knit socks a lot to then sell on craft stores. They'll buy 2 balls of that type of yarn and they can knit 3 pairs of socks. Whereas with me, I like to have a larger foot. And oh, that's the other thing I was going to say about these other ones. Sorry, I'm confusing everybody now. One thing I wanted to say about these ones is that with self-striping socks, I do try and match them. So I like to have identical socks as opposed to fraternal socks where they look some of them not the same. And I tried something different with these ones. So if you have them side by side, you can see that they do sort of follow through, but that's pretty hard to see. But at the bottom, you can see that they've changed. By the time it's got to the bottom, they're not matching. I did something different with these socks for a change. I'm prone to catching an airborne bug called cellulitis, and it always seems to strike my right leg and my right foot, and they swell up uncontrollably, and I need to go on, IV antibiotics and all that kind of boring stuff. but it means that my right leg and foot are permanently larger than my left. And when I was doing this, just kind of thought, oh, wonder what will happen if I just make one sock 68 stitches in the round and the other sock 72 stitches in the round. And so I did that, and yes, the right sock, which is larger, does fit a little bit better than the left one, and it means that I can tell, obviously, which is left and which is right when I go to put them on. And it just meant that the pattern, obviously, when you have more stitches, the stripe is going to be a little bit narrower over time as you go down. So it then meant that the yarn, it started fine at the top, matching at the top, but by the time you got to the bottom, it didn't. But it did get me thinking about socks for myself, and how when you do knit your socks, it's perfectly easy to then adapt things and change things to fit you specifically. So that's, will I do it for all socks that I do? I don't know. If it's a plain vanilla sock, there's absolutely no reason why I can't or shouldn't do that. If I'm going to do a heavily patterned sock that someone else has designed, I think I might just play it safe and just err on the side of caution by following the pattern with the same number of stitches. Unless it's something I can easily see, I can insert an extra few stitches to make it a little bit fairer up there for me. Yeah. And so, as I digressed again, because something popped into my head, I'm a bit random like that sometimes, apologies. The leftover sock yarn, when you do a pair, I do baby socks usually, and then once a year I'll just donate them to a charity, or I'll go to the local hospital and drop them off, and they give them to the newborn children that are born. And as I was saying before, the number of stitches that you do in a round determines the depth of the stripe. When you've got 36 stitches in the round versus 68, the stripes are a very different size. So it's always fun to use up. Some friends of mine collect all their odds and ends from sock knitting and put them into like a bowl or something and display them, so they're quite beautiful. That's quite tempting, but my yarn stash is quite large and my odds and ends are a bit overpowering too, so I'm trying to reduce the number of odds and ends that I have, so I like to use them all up as I can. And when I was knitting these, I was playing around, because also I did a pair of baby socks out of this colourway. And again, there's the difference in size of the stripe. But then I did another pair, because I had more left over and thought, oh, I don't have enough to do a whole pair of baby socks. But I then just thought, well, what happens if I do 2 rounds in one colour and 2 rounds of another colour of a striping sock? And so I got this really stripy pair, which I absolutely love. And again, that's the same 2 yarns, but just instead of being all one colour, I just changed it every 2 rounds. So what I'm trying to say, I suppose, is have fun with your yarn and play around and try little experiments and see how they turn out. Sometimes experiments are a nightmare and a total abject failure, but sometimes you discover something fun along the way, and it lets you use up those last little scraps of yarn as well. So that's pretty much what's off my needles for this episode as well. Out and about. I have been out and about the past few weeks, actually. A few things have been on. I went to the Wairarapa A&P show. Now, for those of you that don't know what that is, Wairarapa is the region I live in, and the A&P show is the Agricultural and Pastoral Association. So we used to nicknames being when the country comes to the town. So it's the showgrounds are full up with all sorts of livestock, so you can see what different livestock are around in the area. Lots of farm machinery for sale. There'll be equestrian events, and I've always watched show jumping and dressage. It's always exciting. There'll be sheep shearing contests. There'll be wood chopping. And wood chopping is always fun, because when I was a child, that was our family sport. My father was very, very good at wood chopping, and Mum used to compete as well in the Jack and Jill events with Dad, with soaring. And she would occasionally do the ladies' chop, and I was in the boys' chop with my brother. My brother was extremely good as well. I was, shall we say, mediocre. But I had fun, and it was a family sport, so you're kind of obliged to take part anyway. I've got this photograph here of when I was a child with my father and brother. So we're holding our axes up against one of the chopping blocks, and that picture was on the front page of the Gisborne Herald. for their AMP show supplement. And I think that was back in about 1978 or 1979. It must have been 78, I'd say. And I have no front teeth. My teeth had come out, and still waiting for the new teeth to come in. And that was the biggest selling issue of the paper every year. And there I am, smiling away with a toothless grin. And all my friends kept saying, "Oh, you had no teeth." But they had superimposed on the block of wood, all set for the show. And so, yeah, that was the front page of the AMP supplement for the Gisborne Herald for the Poverty Bay AMP show, as it was back then, because the region then was called Poverty Bay. That was always, not a very nice name for a region, but it was based when Captain Cook came through back in the Discovery days, and he thought it was a place of poverty because the Māori didn't offer him everything that he wanted, which he was a bit expectant, shall we say. But now it's called Tairawhiti, which is the Maori name for the area, and I think that's a much nicer name, and I quite like Tairawhiti instead. But yeah, AMP shows. So it's just all agricultural things happen in the area and stuff, and I popped along. It hadn't been going for the past couple of years for events, as we all know, happening around the world, but it was back in force this year, and it was quite good to go and have a look at it. So I took a few little video clips and pictures of the place, so I'll just play those now. But just to set you up for it, there was some sheep racing, which I thought was really, really cute. There was some wood chopping, as I said, and I saw a little bit of the shearing, and the shearing is sort of like speed shearing, so it's a contest to see who does it as the fastest. And then you've got the wool sorters as well, or fleeces as they're sometimes called, and how quickly they can sort the fleece once it's done, and the quality with all that as well. So it's all very exciting. And then I went through to the craft exhibits as well. So I saw some of the knitted items and spun items that people had done, and it was good to see people that I know had won awards. I bumped into Lindsay, who'd won one of the baby soccer awards there, and I know Marion Cameron. She won quite a few categories with her spinning and knitting. But there was one woman, Mrs. B. Kelly, I think it was. I don't know who she was, but she won more than half the categories. So she was a very active knitter. Who knows, perhaps I should do some knitting entries for next year and see how well I go. So here, enjoy this little montage from the Wairarapa AMP show for this year. what's life without being out and about and going to a yarn festival? So I went to the spring iteration of Woolington. Woolington is a great play on words because it's based in Wellington. So swap out the E with an O, just change your vowels around, and you've got the name for a Wellington-based yarn event. So it was set up, I think, by Nikki of Dark Harbour Yarns and Joe from Yarn Therapy. They were looking for a small boutique type, yarn event based in Wellington, showing off wonderful hand-dyed yarns and doing it with a bit of a conscience, as they put it. It was all set to go, and unfortunately a couple of the vendors had COVID into their homes or other things had happened, so not everybody could be there. And unfortunately one of them was Dark Harbour Yarns, Nikki, one of the big people behind getting the event sorted and organised in the first place. So it was sad that she couldn't make it there. So I volunteered to help out as well on the day. So I sat at the start of the morning on the raffle table. So a lot of the traders had donated yarns, and there were 2 raffles there in 2 different colourways for yarn. And all the proceeds from the raffle went to the Fairy Godmother project, which has been done by Joe from Yarn Therapy, which is a great project supporting trans youth and delivering some resources to them that they couldn't otherwise access. So I'll put the link down below of that project, which is a really good project. And entry into the event was koha, which is a gift to that cause as well. So we had a lot of generous people there that were willing to donate and didn't want tickets, as well as those that bought quite a few tickets for the prize draws. So that was a lot of fun and nice that I could really help out. And when you go to a yarn event, it's always great because you get to meet up with people that you haven't seen for a while normally. And I've just spent, 4 years living down in Dunedin in the South Island. I've just moved back up north just prior to Christmas last year. So this is, I think, the second yarn event I've been to in Wellington since I've been back. So it was good to catch up with people who I hadn't seen for a while. I should say who was actually there trading as well. As I say, it was just a nice small boutique event, and it was held in Vogelmorn Hall, which is in the suburb of Brooklyn. And it was a cute little venue, typical wooden old hall from the 1930s, 40s. It's been used for all sorts of things. So Wellington, we had Jo from Yarn Therapy, one of the organisers there. She had a great display of yarns there. Amy and Nick from Newtown House, they were there, and they have a beautiful range of imported yarns, and there was sewing product there as well, but they also have homewares too, but they weren't on display, I don't think, that day. It was great to catch up and have a little chit chat to them. Heather was there from Heather Wear Hand Woven, so she was there with her hubby as well, and they were working pretty hard on their stall, very popular. Renee from Oahatia, she was there, so she's Yarn with a Conscience, definitely there. Tash from Holland Road Yarn Company. Tash was still actually on holiday, but some friends of hers manned the stall for her. There was no yarn, but it was all books and other sorts of magazines and great things that were there. Mel was manning the stall, and I've forgotten who was helping out Mel, but yeah, had a little chit chat to them as well. And Sam from Moonrise Yarn Company. I hadn't met Sam before, but she was there selling her yarns as well. So here's a bit of a montage of photographs I took on the day to show you how much fun it was. I should say too, there was food. There's a little kitchenette attached to the hall as well, and Beck from the other yarn brand, Good Something Yarns. I'll look it up and put a note in there for it. She wasn't able to get yarns together for the event, but she manned the kitchen and made sure there's a great supply of food there and treats for people to buy. And again, it was all donated, so all the proceeds from that also went to the Fairy Godmother project. So it was a great, exciting day. I made some purchases naturally, and I'll show those to you in the yarn acquisition section a little bit later. So here are some photographs I took on the day. I didn't think to video everything, so it's just a slideshow of shots from the day. is I like to go walking. It's just what I do for exercise, and I enjoy being outside. And we're really fortunate in New Zealand that there are lots of wonderful walks virtually everywhere. And living here in the Wairarapa, there are plenty around here as well. I'm very, very fortunate. But this walk I thought I'd show you, or where is James this time, is the Woodside Rail Trail. And this is just on the outskirts of Greytown. Now, I used to live in Greytown, and I was living there when the rail trail actually got opened up. And it's wonderful to see now how well it's developed, and a lot of native plantings that were done on the side, how well they've grown up and taken establishment there. It's basically, there used to be a branch line that went from Woodside Station in the country, which is about 5 kilometres outside of Greytown, and it went into the township of Greytown. Get it right, James. And then that line was abandoned in the 1950s. And the land kind of got taken over by farmers that were there. And there was just this great idea to then make a rail trail to get people walking and riding for fitness and exercise, and this got built. So the farmers were very kind to donate that land. Well, I mean, I think give access to the land is a better description, because they still own that land, but they've opened up so people can walk through. So it's just a beautiful walk that takes me 2 hours to do the entire distance of it. And that gives me my 12,000 steps for the day. I try and do 12,000 steps a day. And so it's in 2 parts. And so a lot of people just do the first part, which starts just in Greytown. And you can go to the halfway point, and that's where the trail kind of stops. You've got access to the road again. So a lot of people turn around there and go back. But you can continue on across the water race, and then you carry on through all the way to the Woodside railway station. So I tend to go from Greytown all the way to the railway station, turn around and come back again. I enjoy it. It's just a nice day out, and I did it recently, and I took some video footage of part of the trip for you, so you can see just how amazing it is, and if you're tempted to do the trail yourself. And also too, I couldn't resist the opportunity to sit down and do a bit of knitting at the halfway point. So enjoy this video clip. Right, on to acquisitions. I have got some acquisitions this time. I've been trying to be very good and be on a yarn diet, but like my other diets, I'm not terribly successful in that respect. So at Woolington, how could you not buy yarn when you go to a yarn event? So let's go through what I got. Starting off with yarn therapy. It's this beautiful, multicoloured, tweed-like yarn. The colours look really beautiful there because they are beautiful. And it's got the little nubs on. And having just been to Ireland, I quite like seeing nubs. It gives you that tweedy effect on your yarn. And this one is from, it's called Tweedy Fingering, so that's quite good. So I definitely got the tweed bit there. Donegal Merino Nep. So it's 100 grams, 400 metres or 437 yards, fingering weight, which we call 4-ply here, and it's 85% superwash superfine merino and 15% Donegal Nep. This colourway is called watercolour. So yes, this caught my eye. If I hold it closer, you might see. Can you see? Yeah, you can see the twist quite nicely on there. So it was just because this is just a whole bunch of colours put together. Do I have a pattern in mind for it? No, because I don't tend to buy things with a pattern in mind. Most of my yarn I just see, I like, I buy, put into the stash, bring out, fondle, talk to, play with, and then something will tell me what I need to make out of it in the future. So again, this was just a single purchase, yarn therapy. I wanted to support Jo for all the good work she was doing, and that's that one. I had a little chit chat to Renee from Oahatia, and I couldn't resist buying this one. One of the things I'm trying to do this year is go outside my normal colour palette, and my normal colour palette is greens and browns, and really I thought I was going to go outside, but this is a pale green. I don't normally go that pale, but this really caught my eye because it's got a very subtle, I don't know if I really showed it very well, but you can see that there is a muddy, pale beigey mushroom colour coming through it, and that really caught my eye because I was thinking of land formations, and when I've driven through the desert road, which is the central part of the North Island, I quite like stopping sometimes and looking at some of the earth formations on the side of the road, and this colourway struck me as something that I'd seen before. And so when I spoke to Renee about the colour and the name, because the name, if I could remember, is Pokipoto, and she said that's a type of clay, and she was thinking of those clay colours when she was dyeing it. So for me, it was just quite fun that I was thinking of the earth, and this colourway was designed as part of the earth as well. So I think sometimes these little combined thoughts can be quite wonderful. So Renee's got lots of things on the go at the moment, and I was happy to buy something from her. So this is a high twist merino, 100% merino. So I think it's a very similar base to what I was using with the bicycle socks earlier. I don't know who her supplier is, but yeah. So it's 366 metres, so that's still enough for me to get an adult pair of socks out of. And this probably will be a pair of socks for me unless I do a cowl with a ridge type pattern in it. But I bought it, and she was rummaging around for change. She said, "Oh, don't worry about any change. I don't need any change. Just take it. And I'm happy to pay what I paid for it." And she goes, "Oh, no, you're the guy that does the mushrooms, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm the guy that does the mushrooms." And so she threw this at me. So this is another one of her yarns. And she said, "Make some mushrooms out of this." So instead of giving me the $4 change over it, well, she gave me one of these, which is worth a lot more than $4. And also too, the thought of giving me something to share was more than a price anyway. So thank you, Renee, for the extra bonus gift with purchase. So this one here is a DK weight, or sort of like 8-ply. And this is just superwash merino. This, yeah, we'll go into some mushrooms. So I'll make a couple of special ones, and they'll need a special place to reside, or special places. So keep watching this space. I've got a couple of ideas. I'm pretty sure that one is going to pop up at the Papawai Marae sometime soon. So Oahatia, she's tangata whenua. She feels very strongly about issues related to Māori, and she does that through her yarn with a conscience as well. She used Te Reo Māori on her labels. She's got land back as a hashtag on there as well, in terms of how people feel about treaty negotiations and all sorts of things which get problematic, which they don't need to be problematic if we're all honest and fair and kind. Yeah, her logo is beautiful with the three main colours that we associate with Māori Dim and Te Tino Rangatiratanga. So great, really happy to support her as a dyer and a person. Moving on, and then went around to Newtown House, and I did have a pair of socks in mind, and I wanted some bright colours for them. And when I got home, I realised that the pattern needed 3 colours, not 2, but I just bought 2 colours. But this is Exmoor sock from John Urban Textiles, which Amy and Nick are stocking as part of Newtown House. And these 2 colours just really struck me that they stood out and would be great contrast. So this tealy blue colour is called Dimity or Dimiti, and this is the Exmoor sock 4-ply. And there's 200 metres in each one. So that's actually really quite good meterage for this type of yarn, I thought, because I normally expect 400 metres for 100 gram ultra commercial ones like the Regias but so I was quite pleased that this got such a long meterage. Will be exactly what I want, but I'll need to get a 3rd colour, so I might have to go onto their website and just find a 3rd colour. But yeah, the Exmoor sock is a 4-ply fingering weight from the UK. 2.5mm needle is recommended needle size. I tend to do 2.75. I just do. One of the reasons was that when I bought a set of needles, the 2.75, the colour was orange on them. I think that may have led me to decide to use 2.75s more than I would normally. So it's a mixture of Exmoor Blueface, Corriedale, Zortwills, and 10% nylon. So it's superwash treated as well. So that means I can bung them in the wash. Washing socks, that's interesting. I'm lazy. I don't like to hand wash socks unless they're a really special pair. I suppose I'm lazy that I have so many pairs of socks I've knitted. I don't care if some ultimately die from overwear or they're fragile. But yeah, most of my socks I do tend to put in the washing machine on a cold gentle cycle. And most hold up perfectly well. So yeah, so these I do have a plan in mind. Perhaps in the next episode I might be able to tell you if I've started or if I've bought the pattern, because I haven't bought the pattern yet. So there were those. I'm very happy about those. I do like the colour contrast, but as I said, I need a 3rd colour. I'm wondering what might go with that. And my mind is thinking, so again, yeah, a website visit I think is in need. Last but not least, this. I don't think this is really giving you a good example of just how exciting this yarn was when I saw it, because it's got lots of depth of colours. It's like coppers and browns as well. It's not just a solid colour. It's certainly got mixes through it. So this is from Moonrise Yarn Company, and I hadn't come across them before, mainly because I'd spent the last 4 years or down in the South Island and I wasn't familiar. But I think she's from Otaki, which is just further up the line from Wellington on the other coast. What got me also was the name of this. Now, I'm an 80s music fan. I still think that was the best era for music ever, and I know everybody thinks that's their era of music is the best, but I was a teenager in the 1980s, and I don't know, pop music was my thing, but this one is called Lionheart, and I've always been a big Kate Bush fan, and yeah, she got a song, England, My Lionheart, so this kind of like triggers things too, and going for that, as I was saying about memory and my knitting, it's nice to have things that trigger me to think different things when I see a name or a colour or what I'm doing that day. So this is 100% machine washable merino, so it's got no nylon content, 100%. Again, it's got 400 metres and it's a 4-ply. It's got here gentle cold hand wash. Will I be using my hands or will I just be pressing the buttons on the washing machine? But this Moonrise Yarn Company, Sam was a delight. She was very shy. She didn't want to be photographed when I asked to photograph her stall. So this is lovely. This will go into the stash for the time being. I am definitely thinking I want something around my neck with this possibly, and another accent colour too possibly, but we'll just see how we go. Feels beautiful, nice and soft, so that is beautiful. Those are my yarn acquisitions. But I've also bought a few patterns lately, and while I normally look at my patterns on digital device like my tablet or on the laptop if I'm sitting in the office, I've printed off some copies of these. Now, I'm a fan of Arne and Carlos, and I think they're currently on a North American tour. But I like watching their podcast, and I have a bit of a chuckle, and also because it's a Scandinavian mix, I've got this leaning towards Scandinavian things at the moment as I explore my DNA. And each year, something Arne and Carlos do is they release patterns for an advent of knitted balls. Yeah, knitted balls. I think that was their first real claim to fame too. They put out a book, I don't know how many years ago now, called 55 Knitted Balls, or Knitted Christmas Balls. And I bought the book and I did quite a few. And what we have here, this year they've released another lot. So I'm on their mailing list, so I got notification that it was coming out. So I think it was a 20% discount on that first day. So I bought them. For those of you that are unfamiliar, it's a knitted ball, and you normally do them double pointed needles, and then you stuff them. They give you a straightforward pattern. I mean, the knitting part of it is the same for all of them, but the design that goes on them is different again. So I thought I printed off a smaller one of a detail, but I haven't. That's a bit silly of me, not to worry. We'll get that corrected next time. But it's an advent. So on each of the 24 days of Christmas, you knit one and hang it on the tree, or you try and get ready, or you just get excited and do them all in advance and you won't have them all ready. So they had a competition a couple of Christmases ago for people to post pictures of the ones they've done. You had to try and be artistic, and then they drew 2 winners for prizes. And I didn't win a prize, but I had lots of fun doing little scenes or trying to photograph the different balls with different things around where I was living or where I was visiting at the time over Christmas. I didn't get all 24 done before Christmas, and I was doing them in DK weight yarn, which is what they recommend, which makes them sort of a larger size. This year, if I do them, I'm going to do some, but I don't know if I'll do all 24. I'm going to do them in fingering weight yarn instead and see how much smaller they are. So what do you think about scale and gauge, and see what happens if I do them with finer yarn on finer needles? Because my Christmas tree was a little bit cluttered last year with so many balls, so I might have to do a different way of displaying them. But yeah, so I think I looked at my account, and it was like $5.32 I paid for the 24 patterns, and you also got a free pattern with that for a felted heart. They've done a felted heart pattern this year as well. Don't know if the felted heart will be my thing, but yeah, it was a free gift with purchase kind of thing. And when I went on to check out the patterns with them, they had also released some more sets of hats and mittens. And I was quite taken with the Bickle hat and mitten. So if I take that up. Ooh, that didn't really work. So there we have something did in association with Rowan, obviously. I don't know if the rights have reverted or something, but they were then selling them through their own website. The detail isn't all that great on the hat against DK weight, but the detail looks a lot better on the picture for the mittens. So it's the Bickle mittens and the Bickle hat, and I'm quite excited to do those. Now we're coming into summer here, so it won't be any need to wear it, but I will probably knit them for myself. Oh, Miss Jeff is on the move. Yeah, grooming is very important. We should all be careful with our grooming. And that caught my attention, so I thought, great, I'm going to do those. Have I interrupted you, my dear? Is that a problem? Yes, yeah, as I say, she's the boss. I just have to live with her and just make sure all her needs are met. And sometimes she's happy with me, and sometimes she's not, but that's life with a cat. Welcome along to the Ginger Goddess section. Miss Jeffer rules my life. She likes that title. And I didn't expect to be on the table today. My mother would be turning in her grave if she knew that I allowed a cat onto the dining table. Yeah, my house, her rules. Her meaning Miss Jeffer, not my mum. And I had a little segment each time, which is, oh yes, thank you for licking me, does my thumb need cleaning? I thought I'd do a section called Ginger Goddess, because Miss Jaffa has a knack for sleeping anywhere and everywhere. and she likes a good nap. And I just thought I'd put a picture in each episode of where I've caught her sleeping or hiding or doing something unusual. So even though she's been centre stage for this whole podcast, which has surprised but delighted me, here's a picture of where I caught her sleeping this week. In Stitches, Attack of the Memes. We all need to have a good laugh from time to time, and I know that I need humour in my life to get through. I've struggled with the black dog sometimes, which is why I prefer cats big time. And so I like looking at memes from time to time. So this is the meme I've chosen for you for this episode. I've always quite liked young Mr. Gosling, and I still really enjoy the film Lars and the Real Girl, which is when I first really came across him as an actor. I hope you like this meme. Sight and sound. What I've been reading, watching, listening to. So, sight. What have I been watching? Podcasts. Well, I tend to watch a lot of podcasts or video podcasts on YouTube. I love watching Arne and Carlos with their sit and knit for a bit and what's going on. So I'm looking forward to what they're doing in North America on their current tour. The relationship they have between each other is quite fun on screen, and it just I enjoy the interplay between the two of them and the eccentricities that you sometimes have in a relationship. So that's a lot of fun. And in some ways, it reminds me, this is going way back in time. Hudson and Halls were a couple that did a cooking show in New Zealand, and just the bits you interpret into a relationship with how they interact on camera together is quite funny. I keep thinking back to that sort of time. So yeah, I always like watching Arne and Carlos. Love watching Cabin Boy Knits, which is Christopher and Jamie from just outside Toronto in Canada. I actually caught up with them in person on my trip earlier this year and got to join in on one of their podcasts. So I watched their latest episode, which was their exciting adventures on Prince Edward Island, where they were almost taken off the island by Hurricane Fiona when Fiona hit. So that's quite an exciting podcast to watch. Lots of exciting things that happened on Prince Edward Island, and lots of makers from that area. So you've got people that produce the yarn, dye the yarn, and like rug hooking as well, which I hadn't seen for a while. So lots of things there in that podcast to watch. And I've started to catch up on old episodes of The Bearded Pearl, because I never really started watching it when it first came out. So I'm trying to go through some back issues of that. What have I been listening to? Well, you know, I'm a 1980s music fan, and with the induction of two of my favourite 80s acts into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this week, I have been going back and listening to music from Duran Duran and from the Eurythmics. Honestly, I used to be a member of the International Duran Duran fan club when I was a teenager. Unashamedly so. I used to get a Christmas card and a birthday card each year and a calendar, and I just thought I was just amazing. I just thought they knew me personally. They didn't. It was just, printed signatures, not real signatures, but, it was exciting. I got a little fan club membership card I had in my wallet. 40 years in the biz for Duran Duran, and their first time is, see you, Miss Jaffe, you're off. You're not a Duran Duran fan, are you? So after 40 years in the biz, they got their first nominations this year, and they were the fan favourite with the fan voting. So Duran Duran were in. And I was just a fan right from day one with the first album, self-titled album Duran Duran, and I have all their recordings. Up to Future Past. Sorry, that's got the name wrong for the latest one that came out earlier this year. I was a Nick Rhodes fan all the way through. Synths is the way I go. I just love keyboard music, and so that's my fan. And Eurythmics, oh my goodness, Annie Lennox was just amazing all the way through her career. Still is amazing. She really rocked it on the stage with the induction performance, I thought. The voice isn't quite where it used to be, unfortunately, but I mean, she's 68, so she was rocking that stage, and I thought her sequin skull t-shirt was just incredible. No, Annie Lennox, even her solo career, No More I Love Yous, and Little Bird, and Walking on Broken Glass. I mean, they're classic songs, but she was there for the Eurythmics, and I missed seeing them here in concert in New Zealand because I couldn't get to the concert, but that was sort of like when Missionary Man, the Revenge Tour, they came here for that, and I almost went, but I couldn't. Things were against me, so yeah. I mean, they were the perfect mix of pop and rock really blending, because there was that real hard edge to some of their music, which is fantastic. But actually, speaking of concerts, I did see Duran Duran in concert in New Zealand, up in Auckland at Western Springs several years ago. It was a triple act. It was Robbie Williams, Take That. It was the main act, and then Duran Duran were the second main act. The headliner was actually Robbie Williams, and third act was local band Nesian Mystic, who were really quite big at the time. Western Springs was packed, so it was a really great night. I enjoy that concert so much. So yeah, that's what I've been listening to in terms of that. What I've been reading, I belong to a book group. It's a Greytown group. I used to belong to and lived in Greytown, and when I moved back to Wairarapa, they asked me if I'd like to join again, so I said yeah. And it's done through the book discussion scheme, which is an outfit based down in Christchurch. And we get a book each month to read, and then we get together and have a meeting and discuss the book and give it a rating, a score out of 5. And this month's book we just got last week, and it's called Trauma Cleaner, and it looks intriguing. It's a biography of a woman, a trans woman who became a trauma cleaner, cleaning up sites from accidents and death scenes, or from shows like TV shows like Hoarders. You see how some people just keep collecting things all the time and can't seem to organise it or structure it or keep the places clean. So she goes in and tidies those places up for people, or can negotiate ways of making life better for them. I haven't read it yet. I've just read the first couple of chapters, and it's quite intriguing. So it's going to be quite a good one to follow through on. So I might give a review of that in the next episode, potentially. So let me know what you've been listening to or watching this podcast too. It'd be interesting to know what things we have in common and what we like, or to give me some pointers for some things to watch. Actually watching, I was going to say, other things I've been watching apart from knitting podcasts. I want to mention on New Zealand television, I still watch live-to-air TV to a certain extent. Old-fashioned, I know, but there you go. One Lane Bridge, Series 3, just started this week. It's sort of like a supernatural crime show based around Queenstown in the South Island. So if you're not familiar with New Zealand, if you're watching this from overseas, you can watch that show. You can probably try and find it somewhere online. The scenery around Queenstown is breathtaking, and that is sort of like another actor in the show, if you like. It's wonderful. And I've visited Queenstown several times, so it's lovely seeing the places that I know on screen. But also too, it's a really well-written show, and you see all sorts of New Zealand actors popping up in it, so I've been enjoying watching that. On Netflix, Series 3, must be a common trend of Series 3, Deadwind, a Finnish crime drama that I quite like. That has just started as well, so I'll start watching Series 3. I've watched Series 1 and most of Series 2, and I quite like it. So I watch far too many dark, brooding Scandinavian crime shows on Netflix, I must admit. But I do get that for lightheartedness, I did watch Nailed It, the American version, the Halloween specials. I think there were 4 episodes with the themes all around Halloween. Nicole Byer is the host, and honestly, she has me laughing every time. I love watching Nailed It. So again, anything you want me to watch or you think I should be watching, just let me know. Drop me a line in the comments below. Well, that's all I have for this episode. Thanks for joining me on this Yarncast. I had a lot of fun. I hope you did too. Click like if you liked it. Click subscribe too if you want to, and the notifications button to be informed when the next podcast, or Yarncast as I should call it really, goes live.